I forgot to tell my daughter that the security camera system was working again. The next morning when I reviewed the footage, my heart shattered. The daughter I had raised every single day, the person I loved more than anyone in the world, was sitting there discussing medication dosages and how to cut my brake line as if it were a business transaction. The child I once held when she was afraid was now calculating the day I would die and the inheritance money like a shopping list. In that moment, I realized I wasn't just facing betrayal. I was the target of a conspiracy that had been planned for a long time. Before we continue, I just want to say thank you for being here. It truly means a lot that you're spending your time with this story. Drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from, your city, your country, wherever you are in the world. I love seeing how far these stories travel. Also, please note, this story includes dramatized elements created for storytelling and educational purposes. Any resemblance to real names or settings is purely coincidental, but the message behind it is one I hope resonates with you. There are moments in life when a single forgotten detail changes everything. For me, that moment came on a Thursday evening in October when I neglected to mention one simple fact to my daughter: the security cameras were working again. I had spent 3 hours that afternoon hunched over the junction box in my garage, tracing burnt wiring with the careful patience I had learned from 35 years as a nurse at Providence Hospital. The cameras had been dark for 2 weeks after a power surge fried the old system, and I had finally replaced the damaged components myself. At 62, my knees protested every time I knelt on the concrete floor, but I refused to pay someone $200 for a job I could handle. By 5 o'clock that Thursday, every lens was recording in crystal clarity, uploading to the cloud storage I had set up years ago when break-ins became common in our Portland neighborhood. I washed the grease from my hands and started preparing dinner. My daughter had called earlier that week asking if she and her husband could come by for our usual Thursday meal, and I had agreed without hesitation. She was 34 now, an elementary school teacher with a warm smile that reminded me so much of her father. He had been gone 5 years, taken by a heart attack that left me alone in the house we built together in 1998. They arrived at 5:30. My son-in-law carried a bottle of wine and my daughter kissed my cheek with the familiar affection I had known since she was a child. We settled around the kitchen table and I served the pot roast I had been slow cooking since morning. The conversation was pleasant at first, stories about her students' complaints about his demanding boss at the consulting firm where he worked as a business manager. Then halfway through dinner, my daughter asked a question that made me pause. "Mom, have you updated your will recently?" I looked up from my plate. "Not since your father passed. Why do you ask?" She exchanged a glance with her husband, then smiled in a way that felt just slightly off. "Oh, no reason. I just want to make sure everything is in order, in case anything happens." Her husband nodded, swirling his wine. "It's important to have these things documented. Life insurance, the house title, all of that." I felt a small knot form in my stomach, but I pushed it aside. She was my daughter. Of course she cared about my well-being. "Everything is fine," I assured her. "Kate Sullivan handled all the paperwork after your father died." The conversation moved on, but the question lingered in my mind like a shadow. At 6:30, my phone rang. It was Grace Patterson, my neighbor from 2 houses down, her voice frantic. A pipe had burst in her basement and water was flooding her laundry room. She was 70 and lived alone. I could not ignore her call. I grabbed my coat and apologized to my daughter and her husband. "I need to help Grace. There is leftover pie in the fridge if you want dessert." My daughter waved me off with a smile. "Go, Mom, we will clean up." I rushed out the door, my mind already focused on shut-off valves and water damage. In the chaos, I completely forgot to mention the one thing I had planned to tell them over coffee: the cameras were back online. When I returned an hour later, the house was empty. They had washed the dishes and left a thank you note on the counter. I locked the door and stood in the quiet kitchen, feeling an unease I could not name. My daughter's question about the will echoed in my thoughts. Tomorrow, I told myself. Tomorrow I would call her and mention the cameras. Tomorrow I would ask why she seemed so interested in my insurance policies. But tomorrow would bring answers I never wanted to find. The next afternoon, my daughter appeared at my door with a thermos of chamomile tea and a tin of homemade cookies. It was Friday just past 2 o'clock, and I had been folding laundry in the living room when the doorbell rang. She stood on the porch wearing her weekend jeans and a cardigan, her smile bright and easy. "I had some free time," she said, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. "Thought we could have tea together, just the two of us, like we used to." Something about her tone felt rehearsed, but I dismissed the thought. She was my daughter. We had shared countless afternoons over tea when she was younger, back when she would curl up on the sofa and tell me about school, about boys, about everything. I missed those days. She moved into the kitchen and began preparing the tea with practiced ease, pulling my favorite mug from the cabinet, adding exactly the right amount of honey. The scent of chamomile filled the room warm and soothing. "You always remember how I like it," I said, touched by the small gesture. "Of course, Mom." She handed me the mug and sat across from me at the table. "You took care of me my whole life. The least I can do is make you a decent cup of tea." We talked about nothing important. Her students, the weather, a new restaurant downtown. She was animated, laughing easily, and I felt myself relax. Maybe I had misread the conversation the night before. Maybe her questions about my will had been innocent concern. I sipped the tea. It was perfect. Then at 2:30, the room began to tilt. I gripped the edge of the table, confused. My vision blurred at the edges, and my muscles felt as though they were melting away from my bones. I tried to speak, but my tongue was thick and clumsy. "Mom." My daughter's voice seemed to come from far away. "Mom, are you okay?" The floor rushed up to meet me. When I opened my eyes, the shadows in the room had grown long. The clock on the wall read 6:15. 4 hours had passed. My daughter was still there, sitting beside me on the sofa, her face a mask of worry. "Thank God," she breathed, clutching my hand. "You scared me to death, Mom." I blinked, trying to clear the fog from my mind. My mouth was dry, my limbs heavy. "What happened?" She stroked my hair, her touch gentle. "You don't remember. You told me this morning that you took your sleeping pills by mistake. I think you were still groggy from them when I got here. You just collapsed." I stared at her. "I didn't take any pills." Her expression shifted concern, deepening into something that looked almost like pity. "Mom, you did. You told me. Maybe we should see a neurologist. Memory lapses like this, they can be serious." I tried to sit up, but my body refused to cooperate. She pressed me back down. "Just rest. We'll figure this out together, okay?" After she left, I lay on the sofa in the growing darkness, my thoughts spinning. I knew I had not taken any medication that morning. I was certain of it. But my body told a different story. The dilated pupils I glimpsed in the hallway mirror, the slurred speech, the profound weakness in my limbs. These were not symptoms of dementia or confusion. They were signs of a medication overdose. My nursing instincts, honed over decades at Providence Hospital, would not let me ignore the truth. I forced myself to stand and made my way to the kitchen. The trash bin was empty. She had taken out the garbage before she left. But when I checked the recycling, I found it my favorite mug, rinsed clean, sitting at the bottom of the bin. I lifted it to the light. A faint white residue clung to the bottom. My hands shook as I sealed the mug in a plastic bag. That night, I sat at my kitchen table with the evidence in front of me caught between two unbearable possibilities. Either I was losing my mind or my daughter had just tried to poison me. Every instinct I had told me it was the latter. But my heart, the heart of a mother who had raised this child, who had held her through nightmares and celebrated every milestone, refused to believe it. Saturday morning, I sat in my workshop staring at the monitor, trying to convince myself I was wrong. It was just past 9 o'clock. I had barely slept, the sealed mug sitting on my nightstand like an accusation. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw my daughter's face, her gentle smile, her concerned touch. The loving child I had raised could not possibly have done what my instincts were telling me she had done. I needed proof, or I needed to prove myself paranoid. The security system was running perfectly. Every camera angle displayed in crisp, high definition, the audio so clear I could hear birds chirping in the backyard. I had done good work repairing it. I pulled up the footage from Friday afternoon. There was my daughter arriving at 2 o'clock with her thermos and cookies. I watched her move through my kitchen with easy familiarity, preparing the tea exactly the way I liked it. We sat together at the table, talking and laughing. Then I watched myself collapse. What happened next made my blood turn cold. My daughter did not rush to help me. She did not call for an ambulance. She simply stood there, checking her watch, waiting. After a full minute, she knelt beside me, checked my pulse with clinical detachment, then pulled out her phone, not to dial 911, but to send a text message. I felt sick. But that was not the worst of it. I scrolled backward through the timeline, searching for anything else I might have missed. And there, time-stamped at 10:15 Friday morning while I had been at the grocery store, I found something that shattered what remained of my denial. My daughter and her husband had let themselves into my house. They moved through the rooms, carefully checking each corner. My son-in-law gestured toward the cameras mounted in the hallway and kitchen, his expression cautious. I turned up the volume. "Are these things still broken?" my daughter asked, looking directly at the lens. Her husband examined the nearest camera. "She hasn't said anything about fixing them. I think we're good." "Good." My daughter walked to the kitchen window, peering out as if checking for my car. "Yesterday's test run worked perfectly. She was out for hours. The dosage is right then." Her husband's voice was calm, almost businesslike. "Next time needs to be the final one." My hands gripped the edge of the desk. "The brake line plan will be cleaner," my daughter continued. "It'll look like an accident, especially with the medical history we're building memory loss confusion. By the time she's gone, everyone will just assume it was inevitable." Her husband nodded, pulling a small notebook from his pocket and jotting something down. "I'm documenting everything. Medication mix-ups, disorientation, the whole picture. When it happens, no one will question it." There was a pause. Then he added almost casually, "I've done this before, you know. Trust me, if we're careful, no one suspects a thing." My daughter smiled. "I know. That's why I married you." They both laughed. I sat frozen, unable to breathe. The workshop walls seemed to close in around me. This was not desperation. This was not a moment of madness or poor judgment. This was premeditated, calculated, and he had done it before. I replayed the footage. Once, twice, 3 times. Each viewing confirmed what I could no longer deny. My daughter and her husband were planning to end my life, and they had practiced their method on someone else. My fingers moved automatically, copying the files to the cloud storage, to 3 separate external drives, to a hidden folder on my laptop. I labeled everything with dates and timestamps. If something happened to me, this evidence could not disappear. By noon, I had watched my daughter discuss my death as casually as a shopping list 4 times. The 4th time, something inside me shifted. The grief was still there, a hollow ache that filled my chest. But beneath it, something sharper had begun to grow. I thought of the decades I had spent at Providence Hospital fighting to save lives. I thought of every patient I had advocated for, every battle I had refused to surrender. I was not going to be a victim in my own home. If they wanted to play predator and prey, they were about to learn that this prey had claws of her own. Saturday afternoon, I made 3 phone calls that would save my life. The first call went to Kate Sullivan, an attorney I had met years ago through volunteer work at Providence Hospital. She specialized in elder law, and I had always respected her sharp mind and no-nonsense approach. When she answered, I did not waste time on pleasantries. "Kate, I need help. My daughter is trying to end my life." There was a pause. Then in that calm, measured voice, I remembered she said, "Come to my office now." By 2 o'clock, I was sitting across from her desk, a laptop open between us. I showed her the footage, my daughter and her husband discussing dosages and brake lines and building a medical history to cover their tracks. I showed her the sealed teacup with its white residue. Kate watched in silence, her expression hardening with each passing minute. When the video ended, she closed the laptop and looked at me. "This is textbook financial elder abuse combined with conspiracy to commit harm," she said. "You have audio, video, and physical evidence. Most victims never get this far." Her words should have been comforting, but all I felt was a hollow ache. Most victims never get this far because they do not survive long enough to gather proof. Kate picked up her phone. "I know someone in the Elder Crimes Unit. She is one of the best." The second call connected us to Detective Sarah Martinez. By 4 o'clock, Detective Martinez was sitting in Kate's office reviewing everything I had brought. She was younger than I expected, maybe in her early 40s, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. She had spent 15 years working cases like mine, and it showed in the way she methodically cataloged every piece of evidence. This is the most comprehensive documentation I have seen in my entire career. She said, rewinding the footage to replay my son-in-law's chilling line, "I've done this before. Most victims do not live long enough to collect evidence like this." She turned to me. "Mrs. Thompson, I need to ask, are you willing to let this play out to act normal while we build a case?" I thought of my daughter's smile over tea, the way she had checked her watch while I lay unconscious on the floor. "Yes," I said, "whatever it takes." Detective Martinez nodded. "Good. Here is what we are going to do. You go home, you act like nothing has changed. If they contact you, you respond normally. Meanwhile, I will fast-track this teacup to the lab marked as evidence in a conspiracy case. We will have results in 72 hours. She made notes in a small leather-bound notebook. "That line about doing this before I want to know everything about your son-in-law. Full background check, financial records, any previous connections to unexplained deaths. If he has done this before, there will be a trail." Kate leaned forward. "And I will start preparing the legal framework. Restraining orders power of attorney protections, everything we need to make sure they cannot touch your assets or your medical decisions." For the first time since I had discovered the footage, I felt something other than fear and grief. I felt purpose. Detective Martinez handed me her card. "Call me if anything changes, anything at all, and Mrs. Thompson." She paused, her expression softening slightly. "You did the right thing. A lot of people in your position would not have had the courage to come forward. I thought of my husband, gone 5 years now. He would have told me to fight. He would have been proud." "Thank you," I said quietly. As I drove home that evening, I passed my daughter's house on Maple Street. The lights were on in the living room. I imagined her and her husband inside, comfortable and confident, believing I was just a confused old woman who would soon be out of their way. They had no idea the law was now on my side. Two could play the waiting game, and I had always been patient. Sunday passed in tense silence. I spent the day reviewing footage, backing up files to additional storage, and rehearsing normalcy in front of the mirror. Detective Martinez had told me to act as though nothing had changed, and I intended to follow her instructions precisely. But waiting felt like holding my breath underwater. Monday night at 2 o'clock in the morning, my cameras captured something that made my blood run cold. I did not see it until Tuesday morning. I had been up since dawn, unable to sleep, scrolling through the overnight footage with my coffee growing cold beside me. Then I saw him, my son-in-law, moving through my driveway with a flashlight and a small toolbox. He crouched beneath my car for 15 minutes. The garage camera angle was perfect. I could see his face clearly as he worked, the concentration in his expression, the deliberate movements of his hands. He was not checking the oil or looking for a problem. He was creating one. When he finally stood and walked away, wiping his hands on a rag, I felt my stomach twist. At 8 o'clock that morning, my daughter called. "Mom." Her voice was bright, cheerful. "I was thinking, why don't we have lunch today? There's that lovely place up at Mountain View Lodge. We could go at 12:30. Mountain View Lodge, 25 miles of winding mountain roads, steep drop-offs on either side. "That sounds wonderful, sweetheart," I heard myself say. After I hung up, I stood in my kitchen remembering something my husband used to tell me before long drives. Always check your car before a road trip. I went outside and knelt beside my vehicle, ignoring the protest in my knees. Beneath the chassis, I found it brake fluid pooling on the concrete, dripping slowly from a line that should have been intact. This was not a natural leak. The cut was too clean, too deliberate. By 9 o'clock, I had called Joe Miller, the mechanic who had serviced my car for the past decade. He arrived within the hour, sliding beneath my vehicle with a practiced ease I envied. When he emerged, his face was grim. "Mrs. Thompson," he said slowly, "your brake line has been partially cut. Whoever did this knew exactly what they were doing. It's designed to fail after about 15 to 20 minutes of driving on those mountain roads with no brakes." He shook his head. "You would not have stood a chance. Ma'am, this was deliberate. Someone tried to end your life." I pulled out my phone and photographed everything, the cut line, the pooled fluid, Joe's documentation on his inspection sheet. He provided a written statement noting the time, the damage, and his professional assessment that this was intentional sabotage. "Do you want me to call the police?" he asked. "I already have someone handling it," I said. "But thank you, Joe. After he left, I stood in my garage holding the evidence, feeling the weight of it. This was the second attempt. The dosage in the tea had been a test. This was meant to finish the job. I called my daughter back. "Sweetheart, I'm so sorry, but my car is having some trouble. Could you come over? I might need a ride." I wanted to see her lie to my face. I needed to witness the performance. "Of course, Mom, I'll be right there." At 11 o'clock, the doorbell rang. I watched on the security monitor as my daughter stood on my porch, her hand still on the doorbell. For just a moment, a single unguarded moment, her face was blank, empty. Then she adjusted her expression, smoothing it into concern, affection, innocence. The transformation was flawless. She tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, arranged her features into a worried smile, and pressed the bell again. She was good, very good. But I was better, because this time I was not the victim lying unconscious on the floor. This time I was the audience, and I knew exactly what kind of show she was performing. I opened the door. My daughter burst through the door with a performance worthy of an Oscar. "Mom, what happened? Are you okay?" She rushed to me, tears already forming in her eyes, gripping my hands with what would have looked like genuine concern to anyone who had not seen the footage I had seen. Her husband followed close behind, his face arranged in careful worry. "This is serious. We should call the police right away." I let them settle into the living room, watching them with the detached curiosity of someone observing actors who did not know they were being filmed. "The mechanic said someone deliberately cut my brake line," I said calmly. My daughter's hand flew to her mouth. "Oh my God, Mom, this is terrifying. First someone tried to poison you with sleeping medication." She stopped mid-sentence. The air in the room changed. I tilted my head slightly. "I never said anything about being poisoned, sweetheart. You told me I had forgotten taking my medication. I never confirmed that." The silence that followed was dangerous. My son-in-law stepped in smoothly, his voice measured. "I think what she means is with everything that's been happening, your confusion about the medication and now this, it feels like someone is targeting you." "Does it?" I asked. My daughter recovered quickly, blinking away her slip. "I'm just so worried, Mom. This neighborhood isn't safe anymore. You shouldn't be alone." Her husband nodded, already moving toward the problem like a consultant pitching a solution. "I'll install some additional cameras for you today. Better coverage, newer equipment. We need to make sure you're protected." The audacity was breathtaking. He was offering to install cameras while I had just watched him sabotage my car through the very cameras he believed were broken. "That's very thoughtful," I said evenly. "But I think what I have is sufficient." My daughter leaned forward, her voice softening into something that might have been pleading. "Mom, please, come stay with us for a few days, just until the police figure out what's going on." "I'm safe in my own home," I said firmly. She exchanged a glance with her husband. It lasted only a second, but I saw the calculation in it. They were recalibrating. "Well, if you change your mind?" Her husband stood smoothing his jacket. "We're here for you, whatever you need." "I know you are," I said. After they left, I stood at the window and watched them sit in their car for 10 minutes. Through the glass, I could see the argument, sharp gestures, tense postures, her hands moving in frustration while he gripped the steering wheel. They knew I was suspicious. They could either retreat or they could act faster. I was betting on the latter. My phone rang just as their car pulled away. "Eleanor, it's Detective Martinez. We have the results from your teacup. The lab rushed it through faster than expected." Her tone was serious, the kind of seriousness that made my chest tighten. I sat down slowly on the sofa, the same spot where I had collapsed days earlier. "What did they find?" There was a pause, the sound of papers rustling on the other end of the line. 15 milligrams of zolpidem, she said. "That's triple the normal therapeutic dose. For someone your age and weight, that amount could have stopped your breathing entirely. Eleanor." Her voice softened slightly. "Your daughter wasn't testing a dose. She was attempting to end your life." I closed my eyes. Somewhere deep inside, a small part of me had still been hoping I was wrong, that there was an explanation, that my daughter, my child, could not truly want me gone. But hope, I was learning, could be a dangerous thing. "There's more," Detective Martinez continued. "We ran that background check on your son-in-law. And Eleanor, you need to hear this. Can you come down to the station this afternoon?" I opened my eyes and looked at the security monitor on the wall. every angle of my house, every entry point, every corner. I had built this home with my own hands. I had raised my daughter within these walls. And now I was defending it from her. "I'll be there in an hour," I said. By 1 o'clock Tuesday afternoon, I was sitting across from Detective Martinez in a windowless interview room at the police station, a manila folder thick with documents spread between us. She did not waste time on small talk. As I told you on the phone, the teacup contained 15 milligrams of zolpidem, 3 times the lethal dose for someone your age and weight. The lab processed it in 69 hours. We pushed it through as a priority because this is an active conspiracy to end a life. She looked at me steadily. "If you had finished that tea, Eleanor, we would not be having this conversation." I nodded, my hands folded in my lap. The confirmation settled over me like a weight, but it was not shock I felt. It was clarity. "There's more." Martinez continued, sliding a printed report across the table. "Your son-in-law's background check came back. His sealed juvenile record was opened under court order." I leaned forward. At 17, he was convicted of financial fraud targeting an elderly neighbor, convincing her to sign over property deeds. The charges were reduced because of his age, and the record was sealed when he turned 18. My stomach tightened. A pattern. This was not opportunism. This was a pattern. Martinez flipped to another page. But it gets worse. In 2018, a 72-year-old woman named Barbara Morrison died in Seattle. The death was ruled a medication overdose classified as suicide. Your son-in-law was her financial advisor. He inherited $50,000. The room felt suddenly cold. "Seattle PD is reopening the case," she said. "They're preparing to exhume the body. If digoxin or any other substance shows up in the bone marrow analysis, we'll have him for a prior case. Eleanor." She paused, her voice dropping. "Your son-in-law is not an opportunist. He's a serial predator who targets vulnerable seniors." I thought of my daughter sitting in my living room, tears in her eyes, playing the devoted child. I thought of her standing over me while I lay unconscious, checking her watch. "We have enough to arrest them both right now," Martinez said. "Conspiracy, attempted harm, tampering with your vehicle. I can have a warrant within 2 hours." "No." She raised an eyebrow. "If you arrest them now, it's just conspiracy charges. They'll get lawyers, they'll plea down, and in 10 years they'll be out looking for another vulnerable person." I met her gaze. "I want them caught in the act. I want a confession. I want them put away so they can never harm another elderly person again." Detective Martinez studied me for a long moment. "You understand that means you'll have to be bait. I've faced death in intensive care units more times than I can count," I said quietly. "This is just another emergency, except this time I'm the patient and the nurse." She exhaled slowly, then nodded. "All right, here's how we do this. You go home. You act normal. We'll monitor your house remotely, audio surveillance marked patrol cars, nearby tactical team on standby. The moment they make a move, we move. And if they don't, they will," she said grimly. "They know you're suspicious now. They'll either back off permanently or accelerate. My money's on accelerate. People like this don't walk away when they're this close." We spent another hour planning logistics, panic signals, check-in times, evidence documentation. When I finally left the station, the afternoon sun felt too bright, too ordinary for the darkness I was carrying. That evening, I sat in my workshop reviewing the footage again, searching for anything I might have missed. And I found it. In Friday's recording, during the conversation between my daughter and her husband, there was a line I had not fully registered the first time. "Digoxin works faster anyway." My breath caught. Digoxin, a cardiac medication. In therapeutic doses, it strengthened the heart. In overdose, it stopped it entirely. They had a plan C. Wednesday morning at 6 o'clock, my phone rang. Grace's voice was weak, frightened. "Eleanor, I'm in the hospital." I was out the door within minutes. Providence Hospital looked exactly as it had when I had worked there for 35 years. The same pale green corridors, the same antiseptic smell, the same fluorescent lights that hummed faintly overhead. But walking through those halls as a visitor instead of a nurse felt disorienting wrong. I found Grace in a private room on the cardiac floor monitors, beeping steadily beside her bed. She looked small against the white sheets, her face drawn and pale. "I don't understand," she said when she saw me. "Yesterday I felt fine. Then my heart just started racing, skipping beats. The doctors can't figure out what caused it." I pulled a chair close to her bedside, my mind already working through possibilities. "What have you eaten in the last 24 hours?" She blinked, confused by the question. "Just normal things. My usual breakfast, some soup for lunch." "Oh, your daughter stopped by yesterday afternoon with cookies. She's such a sweet girl. Said she made them herself because she heard I'd been feeling lonely." The blood in my veins turned to ice. I found Dr. Emily Roberts, the young resident managing Grace's care at the nurses' station. She looked up from her chart, polite but rushed. "I need you to run a digoxin toxicity panel," I said. "Immediately." She frowned. "That's very specific. We don't usually—" "I worked here for 35 years, I said, my voice hard. "Run the test." Something in my tone made her nod. 2 hours later, Dr. Roberts returned with the results, her expression troubled. "Digoxin level is 3.2 nanograms per milliliter," she said quietly. "Therapeutic range is 0.8 to 2.0. This is toxic but not lethal. It's almost as if—" She hesitated, as if someone calculated the exact dose to cause symptoms without ending her life. I finished. Her eyes widened. I returned to Grace's room and sat beside her, taking her hand. What I was about to tell her would shatter the safe, quiet world she had built for herself. "Grace, someone poisoned you. My daughter poisoned you." She stared at me, uncomprehending. "She's testing dosages." I continued, the words bitter in my mouth. "Seeing how much digoxin causes symptoms without being fatal. You're a test subject. After she harms me, you'll be next. You have no children, no close family. She'll befriend you, convince you to change your will, and then—" Grace's voice was barely a whisper. "Last month I told her I was leaving everything to charity. She seemed so interested, asked so many questions about my estate planning." The pieces clicked into place with sickening clarity. Detective Martinez arrived within the hour to take Grace's statement. My friend, despite the monitors and the IV line in her arm, sat up straighter and spoke with a firmness I recognized from the woman who had been my neighbor for 20 years. "If this helps you catch them before they hurt Eleanor," she said, "I will absolutely press charges." I squeezed her hand, grateful and heartbroken all at once. When I left the hospital that afternoon, my phone buzzed with a text message from my daughter. "Mom, I heard about Grace. So scary. Thank goodness you're okay. Come have dinner with us Friday night. We need to talk about your future. My husband is making your favorite pot roast." I stared at the message for a long time. Friday, 2.5 days away. The final move. I typed my response carefully. 7 p.m. Friday. Sounds perfect, sweetheart. Looking forward to it. I hit send and stood in the hospital parking lot watching the message deliver. Friday night. They would make their final attempt, and I would be ready. Because this time, I would not be the one caught off guard. This time, the trap was mine. "Are you absolutely certain?" Detective Martinez's question hung in the air between us. It was Wednesday afternoon, 3:30, and we sat in a windowless conference room surrounded by tactical maps and equipment checklists. I met her gaze without hesitation. "I'm certain, because this time I'm not the prey walking into a trap. They are." What followed was 2 days of preparation that felt like preparing for war. By 4 o'clock Wednesday, the conference room had filled with people. Detective Martinez Kate Sullivan and 3 tactical team leaders, whose names I committed to memory, Jenkins Rodriguez and Carter. 12 officers total, all trained in high-risk operations. They treated Friday's dinner like a military operation because that was exactly what it was. The plan was precise. I would wear a recording device so small it could be hidden inside a pendant necklace. A panic button would be concealed in my watch. The tactical teams would position themselves around my daughter's neighborhood, invisible but ready. And if anything went wrong, all I had to do was speak one word, my husband's name. Robert. Just once, and they would come through the doors. Kate leaned forward, her expression troubled. "Eleanor, we already have enough evidence to arrest them both. You don't have to do this." "Yes, I do," I said firmly. "Right now we have conspiracy charges. What I want is a confession. I want them caught in the act. I want them put away so they can never harm another elderly person again." Thursday morning, I visited Grace at the hospital. She was being discharged Friday afternoon, her heart rhythm finally stabilized. "Be careful," she said, gripping my hand with surprising strength. "I will be. And Grace, if something happens, tell them everything about those cookies." She nodded, her eyes bright with tears and determination. Thursday evening, my daughter called. "Mom, I'm so excited I'm making the pot roast right now. The whole house smells amazing." "I'll bring wine," I offered. "Oh, don't worry about that. We have your favorite, that Merlot you love. We already opened it to let it breathe." My pen paused over the notepad where I had been taking notes. Already opened. Already breathing. Already poisoned, most likely. "That's so thoughtful, sweetheart," I said. "I can't wait." Thursday night, the final briefing. Detective Martinez fitted the wire herself, testing it 3 times to ensure the audio was crystal clear. We rehearsed scenarios, what to do if they tried to force me to drink, what to say, if I needed immediate extraction, how to position myself so the recording would capture everything. "Remember?" Martinez said, "We need clear verbal acknowledgement. Get them to say what they're doing and why." I nodded, committing every detail to memory. That night, I could not sleep. At 3 in the morning, I sat in my living room holding a photograph of Robert taken the summer before he died. We were standing in front of this house, the house we had built together with our own hands. "I'm scared," I whispered to the photograph. "But I'm ready. If this is how my story ends, at least I fought back." Friday morning at 6 o'clock, I dressed carefully. A simple blouse, comfortable slacks, nothing that would restrict movement if I needed to run. I taped the recording device to my chest, checked the panic button on my watch, and practiced speaking naturally while wearing the wire. I wrote a letter to Grace and sealed it in an envelope. "If you're reading this, something went wrong. The cloud storage password is Robert1998. Don't let them hurt anyone else." I left it on my kitchen counter. Standing in my living room as dawn broke through the windows, I felt the stillness before a storm. 12 hours until dinner. 12 hours until I would sit across from my daughter at her table knowing she wanted me gone. 12 hours until I looked into the eyes of the child I had raised and asked her why she wanted to end my life. The longest 12 hours of my life had begun. When I backed out of my driveway at 6:30 Friday evening, 3 unmarked cars followed at a distance. Through the rearview mirror, I could make out their shapes in the gathering dusk. Detective Martinez's voice crackled softly through the wire hidden beneath my blouse. "We're right here with you, Eleanor." But when I turned into my daughter's driveway at 5 minutes to 7, I felt more alone than I had in my entire life. At exactly 7 o'clock, the front door opened. My daughter stood framed in warm light, her smile perfect. "Mom, you're here." She pulled me into an embrace that felt rehearsed, practiced. I could smell her perfume, the same scent she had worn since college. For a moment, my resolve wavered. Then I remembered Grace in that hospital bed. The house smelled of slow-cooked beef and red wine. Everything was too perfect. The dining table set with formal china candles flickering in crystal holders, cloth napkins folded like swans. It looked like a photograph from a magazine. My son-in-law emerged from the kitchen, wiping his hands on an apron. "Eleanor, so glad you could make it. We have your favorite, that Merlot from 2015, the year you and Robert celebrated your 30th anniversary." The bottle sat on the table, already open, the cork resting beside it. "I'll just have water for now," I said, settling into my chair. "You know I'm on medication." A flicker of irritation crossed my daughter's face, gone so quickly I might have imagined it. "Of course, Mom, whatever you're comfortable with." The first course appeared cheese crackers, a spread of appetizers. I nibbled carefully, watching them watch me. The conversation was light, inconsequential. My daughter talked about her students. Her husband mentioned a project at work, all perfectly normal. Except nothing was normal. "This house is really too big for one person," my daughter said, refilling her own wine glass. "Have you thought about downsizing?" "I'm managing just fine. But what if you fall? What if something happens and no one knows?" "I have my security system," I said, "and Grace still checks on me regularly." My son-in-law leaned back in his chair. "About Grace. At your age, health emergencies can come out of nowhere." "They certainly can," I said, meeting his gaze. "One day you're perfectly fine. The next day you're in the hospital. It's almost like someone flipped a switch." The silence that followed was heavy. They exchanged a glance. My daughter cleared the plates, her movements just slightly too quick. When she returned with the main course, her smile had tightened. Here we are, pot roast braised in wine sauce. The sauce is the secret. It really brings out the flavor. I looked at the plate in front of me, tender meat swimming in dark, glossy sauce. I'll skip the sauce, I said. My doctor has me avoiding alcohol completely right now. Mom. My daughter's voice carried an edge now. You're being difficult. He spent all day cooking this. I'm not being difficult, I said calmly. I'm being careful. 35 years as a nurse taught me to always know exactly what I'm putting into my body. The room went cold. For just a second, a single unguarded second, my daughter's mask slipped. I saw raw fury flash across her face before she smoothed it back into gentleness. Mom, she said softly, dangerously, we need to talk about something important. She looked at her husband. He walked to the sideboard and returned with a manila folder. Honey, bring the papers. He set the folder on the table between us. My daughter opened it carefully, turning it so I could see the documents inside. We've been thinking about your future, she said, and we want to make sure you're protected. Inside the folder were property transfer documents, account access forms, and medical proxy papers. Every asset I owned, every decision about my health and my home, signed over to my daughter. Just a precaution, she said, her smile brittle, in case your memory gets worse. That was when I decided no more pretending. I pushed the papers back across the table. I will not sign this. My daughter's smile froze. Mom, you're not thinking clearly. This is to protect you. No. I said, my voice steady. This is to protect you, to protect your finances when I'm gone. The silence that followed was dangerous. My son-in-law stood slowly, his hands flat on the table. That's a serious accusation. I pulled out my phone and pressed play. Their voices filled the room sharp and clear. The dosage worked perfectly. She was out for hours. Next time needs to be the final one. The break line plan will be cleaner. My daughter's face drained of color. My son-in-law lunged forward. Where did you get the cameras? I said calmly. I repaired them 2 weeks ago, Thursday, October 14th. I forgot to mention it. That forgetfulness saved my life. I let the next clip play. I've done this before, you know. Trust me, if we're careful, no one suspects a thing. I looked at my son-in-law. Seattle, 2018. A woman named Barbara Morrison. You drugged her, staged it as a suicide, and took $50,000. He stood completely still, his face a mask of rage. Give me that phone, he said, his voice low and threatening. Sit down, I said, or I will say the code word and 12 officers surrounding this house will be through those doors in 5 seconds. He did not sit, but he did not move closer either. My daughter found her voice shaking and desperate. That's taken out of context. You don't understand. I played another clip. Build the medical history. Memory loss confusion. By the time she's gone, everyone will believe it. What context, I asked quietly, makes that acceptable? My daughter stood there trembling. Not with fear, with fury. You recorded us, she hissed. You manipulative. I was trying to survive, I said. There's a difference. For a moment, no one spoke. The candles on the table flickered. The pot roast sat forgotten, congealing in its poisoned sauce. Then my daughter laughed. It was a terrible sound, brittle and jagged. Fine. You want the truth? The mask fell away completely. Her face transformed. The warmth, the concern, the daughterly affection, all of it vanished. What remained was cold, calculating, dangerous. Yes, we planned it. Yes, we tried. And you know what, Mom? She leaned forward, her eyes hard. You deserved it. The words hit me like a physical blow. Deserved it, I whispered. You've been sitting on nearly $1 million in assets, she spat. That house, the life insurance, your retirement accounts. You're 62 years old, healthy, and you're going to live another 20 years while I'm drowning in debt. Do you know what it's like watching you hoard everything we could use right now? My son-in-law placed a hand on her shoulder, but she shook him off. I gave you everything, I said, my voice breaking. I raised you. I loved you. I would have given you anything if you had just asked. Asked? She laughed again, harsh and bitter. You would have lectured me about responsibility, about living within my means, about how you and Dad built everything from nothing. I'm tired of the lectures, Mom. I'm tired of waiting for you to finally do something useful and just go away. The room spun. I gripped the edge of the table. So yes, my daughter continued, her voice cold and clear. We drugged you. We cut your brake line. We tested doses on your stupid neighbor. And we would have succeeded if you hadn't been so paranoid about those cameras. She stood up her chair, scraping against the floor. But you know what? We still have time. You're here. The doors are locked, and you're all alone. She smiled. Aren't you, Mom? If you're still here with me, comment 11 so I know you're standing by my side. And tell me honestly, if you were sitting at that table hearing your own child admit they wanted you gone, what would you do next? Would you run? Would you forgive? Or would you fight? Because what happened after this, changed everything. And one quick note before we continue the next part of this story includes dramatized elements created for narrative and educational purposes. If this kind of content isn't for you, this is your moment to step away. My daughter took a step toward me, her eyes blazing with a fury I had never seen. You're sitting on a house worth $750,000, a life insurance policy worth $300,000, and you gave us $20,000. $20,000 was all I could spare without what? She was screaming now. Without affecting your comfortable life while we lost everything. My son-in-law stood beside her, his voice cold and measured. We owe $110,000. Her credit cards, my gambling debts. People are threatening us. Your timeline or ours, you choose. So you chose to end my life. My daughter's laugh was bitter, broken. Everyone has to go, eventually, Mom. You were going to leave it all to us anyway. We just moved up the schedule. If you had waited, I said quietly, I would have been alive. I would have seen grandchildren grow up. I would have been your mother. You stopped being my mother when you chose money over helping us. The words hung between us like poison. The first time with the tea, she continued, her voice dropping to something almost confessional. I cried when I crushed those pills. The second time was easier. Tonight I feel nothing. You're just an obstacle. What happened to you? I whispered. I grew up, she said flatly. I realized family is just people who want to use you. You wanted a good daughter. I wanted a comfortable life. Neither of us got what we wanted. I turned to my son-in-law. How many others were there before Barbara Morrison? He smiled. It was the most chilling thing I had ever seen. You'll never know. Lonely elderly women are everywhere. They're so grateful for companionship. And you ended their lives. I helped them transition, he said, as casually as if discussing the weather. Efficiently. My daughter turned on him suddenly. This is your fault. You said the plan was perfect. It was perfect until you picked a mother who actually checks her security cameras. They were turning on each other now, the alliance fracturing. I spoke clearly, directly into the pendant around my neck. I need you both to know something. They looked at me. You're not as smart as you think you are. My daughter's eyes narrowed. What? I spoke directly to the wire, my voice steady. Detective, I think you've heard enough. For one frozen second, comprehension dawned on their faces. Then the doors exploded inward. Police, hands up, get on the ground now. Tactical officers flooded the room, Jenkins, Rodriguez, Carter, their teams moving with practiced precision. My daughter and son-in-law were on the floor in seconds, hands behind their backs, faces pressed against the carpet. Detective Martinez entered, her expression grim and satisfied. She began reading them their rights while I stood frozen against the wall watching my daughter being handcuffed. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. My daughter turned her head, looking at me one last time. Not with love, not with remorse, with pure undiluted hatred. I should have used more poison, she whispered. An officer pulled her to her feet and led her toward the door. My son-in-law followed silent, now his face a blank mask. Martinez approached me. Eleanor, are you all right? I nodded, but I could not speak, could not process what I had just witnessed. We got everything, she said gently. Every word, the confession, the amounts, the threats, his admission about other victims. It's over. But it was not over, not for me. Because standing in that room, watching my daughter disappear through the doorway in handcuffs, I realized something terrible. I had lost her long before tonight. Maybe I had never truly had her at all. Kate drove me home at 9 o'clock Friday night. My hands were shaking too badly to hold the steering wheel. "What happens now?" I asked as we pulled into my driveway. "Arraignment on Monday," she said. "With the flight risk and severity of charges, they won't get bail. Trial will be in about 6 months. 6 months! Half a year before I would have to sit in a courtroom and testify against my own daughter. That weekend, while my daughter sat in a holding cell, the investigation became a multi-state manhunt. Saturday morning, Detective Martinez called with the lab results from Friday's dinner. The wine contained 2.5 milligrams of digoxin, she said. The pot roast sauce had another milligram. Total dose 3.5 milligrams. That would have caused cardiac arrest within 2 hours. Eleanor, if you had eaten that meal and drunk that wine, you would have been gone before midnight. I sat down slowly, the phone pressed to my ear. 3.5 milligrams. They had been so certain I would consume it, so confident in their plan. Saturday afternoon, the search warrant results came in. They found everything. A bottle of digoxin purchased illegally. Fake medical records in my name documenting progressive dementia. Life insurance paperwork with a forged signature. And most damning of all, a notebook. A timeline. Martinez read it to me over the phone, her voice tight with anger. October 15th, dosage test T. Success. October 18th, break line. Failed. October 20th, test subject neighbor. Success dosage confirmed. October 22nd, final dinner. 3.5 milligrams. Digoxin. October 23rd, call emergency services perform grief. October 30th, funeral. November 15th, receive insurance payout $300,000. December 1st, list house for sale $750,000. She paused. Eleanor, they planned your funeral before you were gone. They scheduled their grief. They calculated their profit. I could not speak. Grace was released from the hospital Saturday afternoon. Despite everything she had been through, she came directly to the police station to give her formal statement about the cookies. When Martinez told me, her voice was filled with admiration. She's determined to see this through. She said, and I quote, "That girl tried to use me as target practice. I want her prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law." Sunday brought news from Seattle. Barbara Morrison's body had been exhumed. The results confirmed what we had suspected: digoxin toxicity, 3.8 milligrams in bone marrow samples. The suicide note had been forged. Handwriting analysis proved it was not hers. And my son-in-law's DNA had been found at the scene on a glass in her kitchen. But there was more. Seattle PD is reopening 3 other cases, Martinez told me. Elderly women who passed away under suspicious circumstances between 2014 and 2017. All of them had been befriended by financial advisors. All of them changed their wills shortly before their deaths. Eleanor. Her voice was grave. Your evidence broke this wide open. Your son-in-law is a serial predator. How many, I wondered. How many lonely women had trusted him, welcomed him into their homes, never knowing they were signing their own end? Sunday night, I walked through my house alone. I took down every photograph of my daughter, every school picture, every holiday snapshot, every captured moment of a life I thought we had shared. I could not bear to look at her smiling face, knowing that behind those eyes, she had been planning my funeral, calculating my worth, counting down the days until I was gone and she could collect. I placed the photographs in a box and sealed it. Maybe someday I would be able to look at them again, but not now. Not yet. At midnight, I sat in my living room holding Robert's photograph. I did it, I whispered. I stopped her. But God, it hurts. She's alive. I'm alive, but we're gone to each other. Tomorrow I would face her in court. I had chosen the red dress, the color my husband had loved most. I wanted them to see that I was still here, still standing, still fighting. I was alive, and I was not backing down. Monday morning, October 25th. At 9 o'clock, I walked into the courthouse for the arraignment. It was the first time I'd seen my daughter since her arrest. She stood in an orange jumpsuit, hands cuffed in front of her, flanked by 2 officers. When her eyes met mine, I saw no remorse, no regret, only pure burning fury at being caught. The charges were read aloud in that formal, dispassionate voice of the court clerk. For my daughter, first-degree attempted harm with intent conspiracy, elder abuse assault with a toxic substance. For my son-in-law, all of the above plus first-degree harm resulting in the passing of Barbara Morrison. The bail hearing was brief. The prosecutor, a sharp woman named Lisa Campbell, argued flight risk danger to the community and serial predatory behavior. The judge denied bail without hesitation. Trial was set for March 15th. Before the judge dismissed us, I was given the opportunity to make a victim impact statement. I stood my voice steady. Your Honor, the defendants are my daughter and son-in-law. They attempted to end my life 3 times. They poisoned my closest friend as practice. I asked the court to deny bail and protect the community from further harm. My daughter's composure cracked. Mom, how could you do this to me? I looked at her calmly. I didn't do this to you. You did this to yourself. Within days, the story went national. Daughter's plot to end mother's life, exposed by security cameras, blazed across headlines. I became unwillingly a face for elder abuse awareness. Reporters camped outside my house. Strangers sent letters of support and outrage in equal measure. Through November and December, I met weekly with Lisa Campbell. We reviewed evidence, prepared testimony, rehearsed cross-examination. They'll attack your credibility, she warned. Your age, your memory, claims of confusion. Let them try, I said. I have video, I have their confessions. Both defense attorneys attempted plea negotiations. My daughter's lawyer offered 15 years in exchange for testimony against her husband. His lawyer proposed life with the possibility of parole if he pleaded guilty to Barbara Morrison's case. I told Lisa my answer was the same for both: no deals, public trial, full accountability. Christmas came, the first without my daughter. Friends invited me to their celebrations, but I declined. I needed to sit with the grief, to mourn what I had lost. I spent the day looking through old photographs, her as a child, grinning gap-toothed in her school pictures, her wedding day radiant in white. I kept asking the images, when did I lose you? Was there a moment I could have stopped this? The photos gave no answers. In January, I joined a support group for victims of family abuse. Sitting in that circle, hearing other stories, I realized I was not alone. There were dozens of U.S. parents betrayed by children, elders exploited by those they trusted. I made a decision. After the trial, I would help others. Install security systems. Teach seniors to recognize the signs of financial exploitation. Turn my nightmare into something that might protect someone else. February brought final preparations. More meetings, more evidence review. Lisa walked me through every piece, the footage, the notebook, the lab results, Grace's testimony. Are you ready? She asked. I looked at the boxes of evidence, the files of transcripts, the timeline we had built. I've been ready since the day I checked those cameras. On the night of March 14th, I laid out my clothes for the next day. A navy suit, the pearl necklace Robert had given me for our 25th anniversary. Tomorrow I would face my daughter across a courtroom. Lawyers would argue. A jury would deliberate. One of us would lose everything. The difference was I had already lost her. She would lose her freedom, but I had lost my child. March 15th. I sat in the gallery as my daughter was led into the courtroom in shackles. She had lost weight. I had lost sleep. We had both lost each other. The trial lasted 8 days. Day 1, the prosecutor stood before the jury. This is the darkest betrayal, a daughter who saw her mother not as a parent, but as a paycheck. Days 2 and 3 brought witnesses. Detective Martinez outlined the timeline. The lab technician testified about toxicity levels. Joe Miller explained the cut-break line. Then Grace took the stand weeping. She hugged me when she gave me those cookies. I trusted her. They played the footage. The courtroom fell silent as my daughter's voice filled the room. Next time needs to be the final one. I watched the jury's faces harden. Day 4 was my turn. I recounted the tea, the collapse waking, confused while my daughter told me I had forgotten my medication. She made me doubt my own mind, I said. That's a cruelty beyond any poison. The defense attorney stood for cross-examination. Mrs. Thompson, you're 62. Isn't it possible you simply forgot your medication? I managed medications for hundreds of patients over 35 years, I said steadily. I never forgot a single dose. I didn't start with my own. But you forgot to tell your daughter about the cameras. I forgot one thing. That forgetfulness saved my life. If I'd told her, I'd be gone. The final question came softly. How do you feel about your daughter now? Tears fell. I mourn the daughter I raised, the woman sitting there. I don't know her anymore. My daughter whispered, Mom. Don't, I said. You don't have the right to call me that. Day 5, my son-in-law tried to save himself by betraying her. It was her idea, but the prosecutor proved both were equally guilty. Day 6 brought disaster. The defense put my daughter on the stand. She cried, claiming she never wanted to harm me. Then the prosecutor played the recording. I should have used more poison. My daughter's composure shattered. She wouldn't help us. She had everything, and it wasn't enough. The judge called for order. My daughter screamed at me. It's your fault if you just died. The bailiffs removed her. Day 7. The prosecutor's closing was precise. They didn't just plan this. They practiced on an innocent woman. This wasn't passion. This was business. And the product was her mother's life. Day 8. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. Guilty, all counts, both defendants. My daughter collapsed. I sat silent, holding Grace's hand. Sentencing came immediately. The judge looked at my daughter. You systematically made your mother doubt her own sanity. 15 years. Parole eligible after 12. He turned to my son-in-law. Serial predator. Life without parole plus 25 years for Barbara Morrison. As they were led away, my daughter screamed. Mom, please tell them I didn't mean it. I stood. I'll tell them the truth. You meant every word, every action, every drop. Her mask fell completely. I hope you die alone and miserable. I'd rather die alone, I said quietly, than at the hands of a daughter who wanted me gone. Outside the courthouse, I gave reporters one sentence. Justice has been served, that's all. Kate drove me home. It's over, now you heal. But healing has no deadline. 6 months later, a letter arrived from the prison. Some wounds take longer to face. September arrived quietly. Nearly 1 year after the cameras saved my life, a letter arrived from the Women's Correctional Facility. I held it for an hour before I could open it. Dear Mom, I know I have no right to ask for forgiveness. Therapy here has made me face what I did. The tea, the brake line, the poison in the wine. I was drowning in debt and saw you as a solution, not a person. I've written this letter 47 times. I don't know how to say I'm sorry for trying to end your life. I will carry this shame forever. I hope one day you can forgive me. Claire. I folded the letter and cried for the daughter I'd lost, not the woman who'd tried to kill me. The next day, I called Grace. She apologized, I said. What will you tell her? Grace asked. I wrote back. Claire, you are my daughter, and I will always love you. But love is not forgiveness. You made a choice, many choices, to end my life for money. I cannot forgive that. What I can do is thank you. Your betrayal showed me a purpose I never imagined. Because of what you did, I am saving others. That is the meaning I choose to take from this pain. Eleanor. I mailed it the same afternoon and felt something lift. Within weeks, I launched the Safe Seniors Network with Detective Martinez and Grace. We trained 200 seniors on financial red flags, installed cameras for vulnerable elders, and connected families with legal resources. 23 families were saved from exploitation. My testimony before the state legislature helped pass Eleanor's law, which increased penalties for elder financial abuse and created a rapid response elder crimes unit. At one workshop, an elderly woman raised her hand. My grandson keeps asking me to sign papers. I don't understand them, but I don't want to seem difficult. I walked her through the documents they would have transferred her home to him. We contacted an attorney that day. Dorothy Anderson, 78, sent me a thank you card. You taught me to check my bank statements. I caught my caregiver stealing $800. Because of you, I'm safe. One Sunday, I visited my husband's grave. Robert. I whispered, our daughter is in prison. But I'm not broken. I think God allowed this pain so I could help others. The wind rustled the oak trees and I felt at peace. My phone rang. Mrs. Thompson, my name is Patricia. My grandson is stealing from me and I don't know what to do. Can you help? I grabbed my camera equipment bag. I'll be there in 20 minutes. As I backed out of my driveway, I thought about the day I'd repaired those cameras, October 14th, the day that changed everything. My daughter tried to end my story. Instead, she gave me a new chapter, and I would write it my way. Looking back at this journey, I realized that family drama stories like mine don't just happen in movies, they're real and can happen to anyone. Many people think grandma stories are only warm tales about cookies and gardens, but the truth is, grandma stories are sometimes stories about survival. I've heard countless family drama stories from other seniors, and each one carries warnings we must share. Don't be like me. Never think that family love can blind you to the truth. I almost lost my life because of blind trust. Here are the lessons I learned from my own family drama stories. First, install security cameras and tell no one they're working. That forgotten detail saved my life. Second, if someone suddenly asks about your will insurance or assets, document everything. Financial curiosity is often the first red flag. Third, trust your instincts. When my nursing training told me something was wrong, I listened even when it meant suspecting my own daughter. Fourth, build your support network before you need it. Grace Detective Martinez, Kate Sullivan. These people became my lifeline. Fifth, never sign documents under pressure. Elder financial abuse thrives on urgency and isolation. I believe God allowed this pain not to destroy me, but to give me purpose. Every senior who shares their story with me adds another layer to these grandma stories, stories of courage, survival, and justice. If you're watching this and something feels wrong in your own family, please reach out. Check your bank statements, ask questions, install cameras. Don't wait until it's too late. My daughter tried to end my story. Instead, she gave me a new chapter, and I'm using it to protect others. Final note. This content contains dramatized storytelling elements for educational purposes. Some details are fictionalized, but the lessons and messages are entirely valuable. If this style doesn't suit you, that's okay. Please seek content that better fits your needs.